Hey gang, BR here from Scripts Gone Wild. We are super excited to share our interview with Tom McLoughlin, director of Jason Lives, the first in our new series called HALFY HOUR, dropping weekly. We've also got some pretty cool reads on our YouTube page and on the horizon, so click subscribe and help us stay off the wagon. Welcome to HALFY HOUR, a Scripts Gone Wild spinoff where we sit down with the folks who've made or make our reads happen, have some drinks, and shoot the shit for 30 minutes or so. And today we have Mr. Tom McLoughlin, the man behind classics like One Dark Night, Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, Sometimes They Come Back, and much, much more. Tom, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. And
Um,
I don't have a whole lot to do anyway, so I enjoy having a little bit of social, even though we have to work at a distance.
Yeah, it's Zoom. I wish I had bought shares in Zoom before the outbreak hit. I feel like I would be feeling really good right now.
Yeah, yeah, they're certainly doing well.
So you've had the chance, I believe, to watch when we massacred your Friday the 13th, Jason Lives.
I wouldn't call it a massacre, a good slash. The whole point of it anyway. But no, I really enjoyed it. I thought you guys had a lot of fun with it, which is the whole spirit of which it was written and directed to be a fun horror piece.
Well, it certainly achieves that. I think it's the most fun of that franchise, but I'm on record about how much I love that film. So.
Thank you.
So the drink you chose for me today was Guinness. What popped into your head to make you think Guinness?
Well, if I was a drinking Irishman, as I should be, that would be the drink of choice. But the closest I can get is the Guinness glass and H2O. Just being one of those people that somehow never went down the path, but certainly enjoy performing for people who do.
Yeah, we Guinness is. I weirdly had Guinness in my fridge. I don't normally. I'm not even sure why I had it, but it's fortuitous that I did, I guess.
And maybe
And
like St. Patrick's Day. Huh?
yeah, maybe we actually, whenever we have readers on, sometimes a lot of the times we have readers that don't drink, and so we have what we call designated drinkers, where we assign people from the audience to drink for them.
That works.
That works. Okay, so I'm just gonna ask you a few questions, and these are questions that are interesting to me, and hopefully they'll be interesting to people who are watching it as well.
Okay.
Um, so I rewatched One Dark Night a couple days ago. I hadn't seen it in several years, and there's a scene at the beginning of the film. It's where the camera is traveling through the graveyard towards the mausoleum, where I would swear it was directly ripped off twice by Danny Elfman. Once for that graveyard sequence in Beetlejuice, and once for that opening of Tales from the Crypt, because the music is similar, the camera style is similar. Is that something you noticed before or have heard anything about before?
No, it was, I don't know. It was just kind of the way we were going to initially, open the movie. It was a little different when things got recut on me, which wasn't very much a joy to have that occur. But initially it was this whole idea of that's where the title sequence was going to go, and so I just wanted a kind of moving through the cemetery into the mausoleum, down the corridors into the open crypt, and then introduce the girls. So I didn't really think of it being anything that was particularly new, and I wasn't anybody that I thought, oh, I want to do a shot like. It just sort of made sense in terms of that kind of camera move. And the ironic thing is we did a screening of the movie in Paris, and Sam Raimi was there with his first movie, Evil Dead, which has so many of those kinds of things, like 90 miles an hour. And I thought, boy, mine looks so lame compared to all the shit he was doing. But yeah, it's just kind of to me a standard sort of device is the Steadicam shot.
Yeah, I think it was something about the combination of the music and the movement where I was just like, oh my, Danny Elfman had to have seen this film. Like he had to have seen this film when he was working because it's so. I mean, maybe it was from something earlier than that, but it was just I hadn't seen it in so many years, and it just popped into my head when I was watching it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, well, maybe there's a story there, but maybe there's not.
It just, and as a director, you kind of use what tools that are
Sure.
that kind of where that came from.
The film also, it was one of the very first films for Meg Tilly and for E.G. Daily. I'm curious a little bit about what the casting process was like. And of course, a question that how could anyone not ask, how in the hell did Adam West get involved?
Yes. All right. Casting. Well, basically, when we finally got the green light to make the movie, I had like 3 weeks to prep. And so casting had to be, done immediately. So we started, bringing in people. Elsa Bergeron was the casting director. And I was kind of looking for the lead girl to be sort of your classic, girl next door, all-American blonde, blue-eyed, all that kind of thing. And I was probably going to, do a different look for the, the Robin Evans who did the what's her name in the movie? I forgot.
Oh.
But so I was, she kept bringing in blondes. I mean, Sharon Stone actually auditioned for that role. There was a lot of people that were just kind of up and comers that came in on it. Dominic Dunn also came, in on it. So the casting director said, well, I've got I know it's not what you're looking for, but I got this girl that she's only done a small part in this Disney movie Tex, which hasn't come out yet, where she plays Matt Dillon's girlfriend, but I really think she's something special. So they brought in Meg Tilly, and she had her hair kind of all down in her face. She had braces. When I first looked at her, I thought she was Asian. I mean, she just had a kind of a very unique look about her. But she kicked back her hair and started doing, my lame dialogue, and she brought it to life. And I went, oh my God, she's got to do the part. She really makes this thing real. So she had the role. E.G., I think, had done a few things at that point. I mean, I didn't know her, but she came in and I loved her energy. I loved her type. So, she got the role that way. And Adam West was cast, not through any audition, but because the casting director said, well, we have a list of submissions from agents. And, well, here's one probably you don't want to use, Adam West. And I go, why? Wait a minute, why? And she goes, well, no one wants to hire him because he's Batman, and that's all they can see. And I went, fuck that. I mean, this is the thing that I hate about this business is they typecast you and you can't do anything else. So I said, yeah, let's give him the role. I would love that. I've got great love for that TV series growing up. So interestingly, he came in, and as we started, the process of shooting, because we didn't have any time for rehearsal, Adam started doing all his lines like, well, I can start it up here and then I can come down here and I can make it go up and down because I think, Tom, it's more interesting than just making it straight and flat. So I was like, uh-oh. I mean, he's doing, the Batman voice right there. So almost every single scene, I had to kind of take that away from him. And okay, whatever you want. I mean, he's a really nice guy about it. So, cut to after the film's done and the company went, closed down, went bankrupt. Somebody else took it over, and they ended up adding some things to the very beginning of the movie. And they brought Adam in to do the looping, and they just let him go. So there's scenes in the movie where he still does the Batman voice.
It's fantastic, though. He's great.
Yeah, he's that's Adam West.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to go into the horrors of post-production of that film with you. I don't want to cause nightmares again. I want to move on to Jason Lives, which of course we did a read of recently, which is, I've made very clear is my favorite of that franchise. So that film came off kind of fresh off New Beginning, which had underperformed, particularly up against Final Chapter. And but I don't know many Friday the 13th fans who don't feel like Jason Lives is either the best of the franchise or one of the best. So I'm curious, what do you think contributed to it being, at the time, it was the lowest grossing of the franchise? But a lot of people I know think that was in a large part due to New Beginning.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, for one, they always, made Friday the 13th 2 years apart. And the fan reaction to New Beginning was so bad that they decided they were going to rush this into production a year earlier than they normally would. And when I was called in on it, because they had seen One Dark Night and Frank Mancuso Jr. liked the kind of gothic style that I did with it, and he thought maybe I could bring something interesting to the franchise, he basically said to me, look, only marching orders I'm going to give you is bring Jason back from the grave. Some way, somehow, I don't care how you do it, just bring him back so that we can let people know that, he is definitely back. And I said, well, can I have a sense of humor about the whole thing? And he goes, well, you mean like make fun of Jason? And I go, no, Jason will still be the ultimate monster. In fact, probably even more so, because I have an idea how I'm going to bring him back. But no, I want the kids to have a sense of humor. I want this to have a little satiring the whole franchise itself, like with the James Bond, title opening. And I also wanted to, put in, kids and car chase and underwater fights and all this stuff, which we all, managed to do on the budget that we were given, regardless. So when it came time to open, I was the one that was terrified that the fans were going to now hate the fact that I put comedy in it, and I, kind of made it more of a movie than just a, slasher film. And the people who did come, and a lot of people did not, because of, they thought they weren't going to get, Jason. They thought they were going to get, the Tommy character as Jason.
Yeah.
So we did not get the box office. The other thing is, Aliens, opened a week before. So, people who love that went back again, because, they had a choice between, what they perceived as a shitty Friday the 13th movie or go see Aliens again and bring a friend. That's kind of what happened. But over the years, what's kind of occurred is, what I call the, Wizard of Oz syndrome, where, people saw Wizard of Oz on TV. It was a much more intimate, relationship with the screen and the way that they saw it and discovered it, usually at a very young age. And it kind of became the, the first movie a lot of fans saw and kind of pulled them into the, the franchise. So yeah, all the popularity that it's gained over these years, and nobody's more shocked about it than me, that it was just amazing here 35 years, whatever it's been, years later, it's more popular than it ever was.
I always say it's the first Universal monster movie I ever saw. Because that's what it felt like. That's what it feels like now to me when I watch it. It just has that classic Universal monster movie feel to it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me thinking of Jason in that context. And so I've got a question from one of our Patreon subscribers, which you might have just touched on a little bit there. He asks, I'm wondering what it was like getting to take on a franchise that had that much backstory to it already, and how challenging it was to come up with a new story that was loyal to that franchise.
Well, that came as part of my homework. I had only seen part one, so I had not even seen any of the movies with the masked killer, because, and it wasn't because I was, purposely avoiding them. It's just that there were so many of those types of movies after the success of Halloween, which obviously, was what, promoted, what pushed Sean Cunningham into making, the Friday the 13th in the first place. The first one I thought was really good. I thought it was, certainly it had those elements of, killing off teens and all that, but it had, Tom Savini's effects and it, and I loved the twist at the end of it being the mother, all that stuff. So I had to go into Paramount, into a screening room, and watch all the movies back to back, because I wanted to see, all right, what has everybody else done? What story could I mine out of here? There was a lot of big logic things that didn't quite track from movie to movie. So I thought, all right, I'm going to go back to just the basic story of, Jason being this little boy that drowned because camp counselors weren't watching him, and his mother, did the vengeful, thing. And then he saw her get killed. So now he's on this, path to kill anybody that's in and around that camp. But I wanted to take it another level because I'm bringing him back from the dead. So all that Universal that you talked about, Universal Studios movies, those horror movies, just all that influence was in me. So from the moment Jason is brought back like Frankenstein with electricity, now he's basically, unstoppable, unkillable. I never thought of him as a zombie. I just thought of him kind of as a, lightning bolted corpse that, continues to kill and like almost like Terminator, you can't stop him. So I tried to kind of make a little more of a story than the other ones had, in that Tommy brings him back, to life. He's now, after Tommy for doing that, because like most monsters, they're very happy to be dead and, peaceful. And Tommy has a story of he's got to try to convince people that Jason is back before he kills more people. So there was a much more of a kind of a through line, in the piece. But I tried to, maintain as many of the, basic rules of the franchise of keeping it at the camp, obviously, having, the counselors getting killed, but I wanted to make them likable. I really wanted them to be, funny and witty and kind of talking about Jason as he was this legend, to try to scare each other. So, it had a lot of that kind of irreverence, to it.
Yeah, that obviously one of the scenes in the film that speaks to that irreverence, which I'm just curious about if you ever got any pushback on it, was the smiley face scene.
People either love that or hate it.
I love it.
To me, it was just a joke on that iconic image that was everywhere in those days. And I thought if, Jason threw you into a tree and, you moved aside, somebody had carved that in. So it's just this bloody smiley face. And it was another one of my visual gags for the movie.
Your version of Jason, which is really the first like resurrected version of Jason, is really the version, I know it's the version I grew up with and the version a lot of people grew up with. I mean, that's what, when I think of Jason, that's what I think of, as him, half dead, half not dead, dripping and crawling with things. And so yeah, that whatever the impetus, all that impetus was before it, thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, he sort of changed a bit, I don't know, on the next few movies, because Kane Hodder took over the role. And Kane, I thought, did a great job, kind of adding things like the breathing, before he killed or after he killed. And he added, a lot of elements that, it wasn't in my Jason or in the other Jasons. But I kind of, since I had C.J. Graham, who was, ex-military, I really kind of embraced that idea that he moved like a machine and everything was done, like he was, electrified. And he had a force, and I loved the way, his how he kind of commanded the character, like he was being, controlled, by something else that drove him to do these things. And for a lot of people, they really love that, and other people love Kane, and that's fine. I mean, to me, Jason, like any character, people come in and do their interpretations.
So I have to ask you, what is your favorite of the Friday the 13th franchise?
Part 4.
Part 4. Okay.
Yeah. I watched them all back to back. I thought that had the kind of the best production. I thought the acting was good. I thought, a lot of the kills were very, inventive and stuff. And I just thought in general, it just was, for me, that was the best made film. And I think they put more into it as well, thinking this could be the last one. So let's make this as good as possible.
Yeah. I'm going to bump up to 1991 now, and a little movie that I loved back then and still enjoy very much. I watched a couple months ago for the first time in a while. Sometimes They Come Back. So were you at all involved with that project back when it was being considered for Cat's Eye, or did you just get attached later when that had passed by?
Yeah, I basically, everybody, once, they found that Stephen King's name above the title meant, box office or obviously network, success with the Stephen King movies being done on TV. And Dino De Laurentiis had bought up a bunch of the titles early on with some other, God, what was his name? Sablonsky, whose title card is at the very end of the movie. But there was a partnership with those two guys, and they basically owned the story, the short story of Sometimes They Come Back. And they hired two guys who had done Jewel of the Nile to write the script. And the script, was good, had some good stuff in it, but it didn't feel like a Stephen King, world to me. And Dino agreed. So, we went and got another writer and, kind of approached it from, let's bring up the family element that, the Tim Matheson character really had an incredible relationship with his older brother that, he laments that was gone. And then, of course, he's carrying the secret, of that he was responsible for the death of those guys. So when they come back, it's, all the more frightening. So we really kind of went at it going, all right, let's make this as feature-like as we possibly can. And we did shoot it in CinemaScope and also had it framed for television because it was being released as a widescreen movie in Europe and then shown on CBS here in the States.
Was there ever any talk about it releasing it theatrically in the States, or was it always just meant for television?
It was, for the States, that was the deal that Dino worked out. It's like, CBS really wanted a Stephen King movie since I think it was ABC that were doing most of them, if I remember correctly. And they wanted that, and they put in a certain amount of money into the budget. And then, he had his own backers and stuff in Europe. So, he was, planning on doing it, releasing it as a feature over there.
Did you ever work one-on-one with Stephen King on that adaptation at all?
I wished I could say I did. I've yet to even, meet him. He did, say that he enjoyed the film quite a bit, and it was sort of humorous to him because it kind of had a lot of the best of Stephen King moments in there with the car from hell kind of thing. And the relationship with the boys and stuff, having the elements of Stand By Me in there. So it did kind of cross into things that were not in the short story because it had to be kind of fleshed out and made into a much more of a feature type story than what the short was.
There's something about Stephen King stories. I was commenting on this with a friend the other day. Why is it that every bully in a Stephen King story carries a switchblade and wants to kill someone?
I don't know. You have to ask Steve that. I'm sure he must have had some run-ins probably, in his early days with somebody like that. Because all that stuff obviously comes out of your subconscious or, things that occurred in your childhood or in your current life, because all his stuff has such a relatable quality to it, and some of that is just he's such a humanitarian type of guy that he really kind of cares about people, and I think people are all written with a sense of reality, and he in his books in particular you hear what people are thinking, which makes them, very compelling and very hard to do as movies, because a lot of the information or the cool, scary stuff is stuff that the character's going through in their head, which is great. And the other thing with King is, he grew up with the same Twilight Zones, the same Universal horror movies, the same, Outer Limits, all those shows that we all who love the genre, watched. So, you could see in his work, a great sense of this is cool, and and this is what I grew up with, and we're going, yeah, that's really cool, and I remember that, so he had the influences of that with the fact that he could write stuff that was so personal and intimate, and it made it that much scarier.
Has there ever been a Stephen King story or book that you ever like, God, I would kill to direct that?
I guess when I read The Shining initially, I thought that would be great because I just, I love ghost stories. Years later, I was able to do the Henry James story, A Turn of the Screw,
Yeah.
And that kind of was, my chance to kind of do ghostly and possess things. But that really kind of stuck out at me. I saw Carrie in the theater, which drew me into the whole Stephen King, wanting to read his books and stuff. But I don't think there was anything else that at that time that I really was into. I was talked about to do The Stand because I had just done this TV miniseries called In a Child's Name, and it was huge. It became the #1 movie in 1991. So they were talking about me doing it, but I just felt like, I don't know, it's such a big project, and I don't know if it can do it justice. I felt like the budgets was gonna be bad, but my good pal Mick Garris stepped in and he did a really good job with that. So it was,
Yeah.
it did come out well.
Yeah. Um, over the last few years, you've done quite a number of television films based on true crime stories, like the DC Sniper and Peterson and Martha Moxley. And I guess I'm curious about that. I'm a huge true crime podcast person. What is it that attracts you to that?
Well, kind of, I have to sort of say I was led into it, not expecting that my career was going to go into the wonderful world of TV movies and miniseries. But that was a result of being offered from CBS In a Child's Name. And I didn't know who Valerie Bertinelli is. I never watched TV movies. It was like, I don't know why I'm accepting this job, but I'll do whatever I can to make it work. And I put in a lot of horror overtones in the movie and a lot of sequences that, were genuinely scary. And it did incredibly well. So then I started getting offered these very good scripts with very good actors. And I thought, well, let me run with this for a while. And in that process, the true crime things happened. And obviously In a Child's Name was a true crime movie. And, I started going, what's interesting is that I started in the 80s doing basically, the 80s real monsters. I obviously did Jason. I did an episode of Freddy's Nightmares. I did a Stephen King thing. So all kind of iconic, 80s monsters. And now the monsters were real. They were human monsters, far frightening to me, because a lot of these people, when you start to research them, and I talk to people on death row, had done things, they have absolutely no conscience about it. I mean, that sociopath mentality is like, no, I didn't do that. I'm accused of stuff I didn't do. And there's a coldness that I thought, that is really scary, because for years I thought, when you did these crimes, you couldn't go to sleep at night, you were haunted by it. It's like, no, they slept very well. And it made me that much more interested, in them. And like in particular, the DC Sniper, he had this father-son relationship with that kid Malvo, and he was, praising him for the things that he was doing and giving him a father's role that he never had, the boy never had himself, and basically taught him how to shoot expertly so that he could, shoot past 8 lanes of, highway traffic and, nail somebody in the head at a gas pump, and get away with it. So it was much more, dark and frightening. But what I wanted to add to it is the humanity that's in these people, and yet it gets completely, it completely disappears when they do these acts. They just act out on what they feel is the right thing, and they're sure they're right about what they're doing. And so I ended up, sort of gravitating to a lot of those kind of, very frightening true stories.
Do you find that when you're doing those, do you get more or less control than when you were working on like a studio picture?
It varied, because each one had a different producer, and certain producers just completely trusted me, and I was able to do pretty much anything I wanted as long as it stayed on budget. That was all they cared about. And I would constantly be adding things. I would constantly be,
taking what we were going to shoot that day and saying, all right, let's improvise with the actors because I don't like the way the scene's written. And of course, that's a huge no-no. You're supposed to get everything blessed by the network ahead of time and so on. And, I lied, borrowed, steal, did whatever I could to try to make the movie as good as I possibly could make it. And, I got away with a lot. I mean, I did TV movies and stuff. I did something like 38 of them, I guess, the miniseries and television movies and movies for cable. And I would say, 95% of them, I had a lot of, creative freedom. And then, of course, you just kind of balance it with what is it that they want, try to give them, what it is that they're looking for this movie to be. Lots of times it's just the casting that they're concerned about because that's what's going to help sell the movie. And after I get past that, then I just, as a director, have to work, with actors. Like I had Tatum O'Neal on one of these things, and poor Tatum was like just burnt out, from drugs and a horrible childhood. But I was reading her book as I was shooting that movie, and I had such, empathy for her and the things she went through that I could be patient with all the line stumbles and all the things that she did. But you find with each actor, something about them that you really love, and you keep reminding yourself, no, there's a really good person in here, and I just got to get that out and onto the screen. So even the villains, I wanted you to kind of like and relate to, and then go, I can't believe that I'm okay with this person who just did this horrible crime. But that's the way it kind of is in life. People never see this coming. Somebody's, bizarre, evil act. They just seem like, they're just a guy next door that was a nice guy.
Yeah. When you're making, what process do you get the most engaged in? I know some directors, it's pre-production, some it's shooting, some it's post. Like, where do you fall in that?
I guess part of it, the first part of it that I really love is going through the script and visualizing it, writing on the side of the script, what kind of shot I could see this being, or what the color, for that scene would be, for the right feel for it, or what additional little element could be in the scene that would, give more subtext to the scene. So again, you have that kind of creative freedom that nobody's telling you what to do. There's no deadline. I could do this on airplane trips back and forth, during casting or going on location scouts. So there was a great freedom in that, and the great, God, this could be really great if I could. And then, of course, executing it is always the hardest thing, because that's where anything can go wrong. And sometimes They Come Back was a film that was absolutely cursed with every day wrong. And how we got through it was like friggin' miracle. But at the end of the day, it all sort of worked, which was kind of amazing. But I think the thing that I really love the most, where I feel like I have the most fun in things, is in editing, in the post-production schedule, because now we've got all the, crayons to draw with, all the pieces of what you wanted to have in this scene, you've got there. And, I have a great relationship with my editors. Charles Bornstein, I did a lot of the movies with, and Marshall Harvey. And we're just, we are movie lovers. So we're constantly referring to, that as we're making the movies. So there was there was just more of a fun and less pressure, in that process. So you kind of are once again rewriting the movie and editing, and then coming up with, the music that you think would be really cool, and hope that you can get a composer that can, do that sort of, thing for it. And then the fun things happen, like with Friday the 13th, is putting in Alice Cooper songs, and then suddenly being able to actually have Alice Cooper songs as well as songs. So, every so often you really luck out, and kind of what you put in, as your vision and what you wanted to hear, you actually get.
I think I remember correctly that you're teaching at Chapman now.
Chapman University, yes.
Yeah. So horror has obviously changed, and the horror landscape has changed quite a bit over the last 2 or 3 decades. It's gone in some wild directions. What type of horror films and what type of horror filmmakers appeal to you these days?
That's a great question. I mean, I'm still, I don't want to say old school, but if you ask me, what's hands down, my favorite horror movie, it's The Exorcist, because The Exorcist pushed, that envelope far beyond what anybody imagined you could do. It had such an emotional effect on the audience because I was fortunate to be around to see it in that first week when it was released and watch people running up the aisles in terror, throwing up, being, like when the movie was over, they just sit there in the seats or start to get up and then freeze. I mean, everybody was in like a state of shock. So it's hard in this day and age to do something like that to an audience again. So it's like I'm always thinking about, is there something where you can get that kind of audience reaction, or at least the kind of thing that Halloween had with the people yelling and screaming at the screen and talking back at the screen and stuff that, was so wonderful to see an audience kind of participate in it. Today, it's like I go and see things that I'm hoping, like It. I thought, they did a really good job on both of those movies, but I still, I went and saw it opening night and went, how come nobody's responding to this thing? And then I went down to where, basically the lower class people who, can just barely afford a movie and they're $8 instead of $15. I thought, okay, this crowd's going to react. And it was the same sort of, I think the kiss that the boy gives the girl was the only time the audience was vocal. And I go, why in something that's that good are they not reacting? I don't get it. So when I'm writing horror movies now, I'm constantly thinking, can this scene work? Can it give the audience that reason to respond? And I've just written a sequel to my Friday the 13th after 30-something years. And the whole process was, okay, I'm sitting in a theater. Will this get a reaction? And I'm hoping that it will, if I can ever get the movie made.
Well, I'm assuming that the killer in that one is not going to once again be Roy, the ambulance driver, or Roy will not be making a reappearance.
No, Jason, it's 13 years after mine, so it's 1999. So I'm still kind of keeping a period feeling to it. And it's Jason, bigger and meaner and, more, of a killing machine than ever before. And it's an all-female cast for the first time. The girls that are all up in this place, that's by Crystal Lake, all have to fight this or get away from this person that they don't even know who he is or what he is. So there's no mention of Jason, between them like there was on My Jason Lives. And it all takes place in the winter, in the snow. So it's got a lot of, different elements that I've kind of woven through this. But the main thing is I kept thinking, we got to make these sequences so that people really get pumped up about it, and if you're a fan, hopefully there's a lot of, little Easter eggs and things that, you'll enjoy. And if you're seeing a horror movie for the first time, it still works as a film.
Well, that sounds incredible, and I hope someone gives you money to make that film.
Well, this legal battle that's going on between the original writer and Sean Cunningham, that's gone on 9 years now. So who knows? With the current climate of when are you even going to get movie theaters back? It's hard to tell when this is going to finally all come together.
Well, I think that is an appropriate place. That sort of Friday the 13th optimism is a good place to end this delightful conversation, sir.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being supportive of us reading Jason Lives and for answering some questions with us.
Oh, it was my pleasure, and you guys, again, did a great job. I really enjoyed watching that. It was great fun.
Well, I appreciate that, sir. So big thanks to you. And then, to those out there, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can just click on the subscribe button right now and you're good to go. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/scriptsgonewild. And we've got some fun perks and rewards. And for everything else, you can visit us at scriptsgonewild.com. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.